Well, hello, and welcome to the first episode of Beyond the Listing, presented by Ad Astra Host. In this podcast, we talk about all things real estate through the prism of short-term rentals. And today, we're joined by two titanic individuals in the real estate space, Elena Day and Nima Kaden. And thank you so much for coming. So there's a lot of plethora of topics to discuss. And I think the first big one to start with is the new City of Toronto STR regulations. So let me kind of set the stage for this a little bit, talk for a few minutes so you have a little bit better understanding. In my opinion, it's a political witch hunt. They're going after people in this market and they're really trying to decommercialize the space for operators. And it's pretty wild. So you probably already know some of the regulations that have happened over the last few years where you can only rent short-term for 108 days in Toronto. It has to be your principal residence. So now they're taking it to the next level. They're making it even more stringent. And there was a meeting on April 5th with counselors and everybody who wanted to come in from the public and present their case for and against the situation. And on the April 17th, which is coming up, they're going to actually vote on that. So it's a lot. And some of the things that are changing is that now you can just register online very quickly, very easy to get your license. What they're looking to do is to actually bring in people for in-person interviews. Probably not for every single one. They can't just process that, but they're going to be selecting potential cases and they're going to be bringing them for the interviews where you have to prove that this is your principal residence, that you're, living here. So that's, a big change. And also there are some inspections that are happening on the premises for short-term rentals, but they're going to ramp that up significantly. They're hiring lots of new people to oversee this, and it's a big change. Feels like hotel lobbies really pushing this type of an agenda because fewer short-term rentals in Toronto, higher prices for hotel rooms. So another big change is that you can rent your whole dwelling or you can rent a room in your property. So let's say you have a 3-story house. You have a room in the basement, you have a room on the second floor, 2 rooms on the second floor, and on the third floor you have a master bedroom. So the owners are living in that master bedroom, but they're renting out those 3 rooms. You are able to rent up to 3 rooms when you live in the space right now. What they're trying to change, and you can do it for the whole year, 365 days. What they're trying to do is they're trying to limited up to 1 room per dwelling and only 180 days. So that is a huge change. It doesn't affect, obviously, the dwelling that's rented fully, right? But it's a big change for people who are struggling to pay their bills these days, right? They can rent 3 rooms. That's 3 times as much income. And city councilors are mocking this. They're saying, back in our days, people didn't have to rent anything. They didn't have to share their space with anybody else. This is, this is not a good culture. Sir, loaf of bread is $9 in certain stores. Okay, very nice loaf of bread. Not the Wonder Bread one, but it's still insane what everything costs. So people are trying to survive and people are making such comments that are, in my opinion, absolutely unacceptable. So, that's what's happening. And just wanted to get your take on what do you think? And I know you guys are not involved in short-term space as deeply as obviously Ad Astra Host, and we focus on this area, but you hear about these things and a little bit of feedback, open conversation around this issue.
I'll have Elena start.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me here today. I'd say that it's actually quite impossible, almost next to impossible to find any short-term rentals. And being a full-time realtor, I would say, and you probably will back me up, MLS almost has no listings in that field, in that space. If there is someone that comes in from the outside, whether it's outside of this country or outside of town and looking for a short-term rental, or some marriage status has changed and they're looking to park themselves until the further decisions are made, I almost always have to refer them back to Airbnb. And sometimes those Airbnbers have a difficulty actually accepting anything longer than, a couple months because they're also afraid. What kind of jurisdictions are there if they stay longer than 20 days, 30 days? How do we get rid of them? And so on and so forth. If somebody stays, have a contract with the Airbnb for 20 days and then all of a sudden they haven't left, what's next?
Well,
So
That's a bit of a 20 days. It is not an issue. It's when you get, over 28 days, everybody asks me, what if somebody is going to stay, they're not going to leave? With Airbnb, it's a little bit easier because there was a court case where a person has stayed through Airbnb for 6 months and they wanted to keep staying there, but the owner of the property said, no, I want to rent it to other people. And the owner actually won the case, but that's only when you go through the Airbnb app, right? Because it's still considered to be not a lawyer, but that's what happened. So there's some peace of mind there, but you're right. Like it's, I feel like hotels are trying to, they have a very strong lobby clearly. And in New York, they've completely eliminated pretty much the Airbnb market because their regulations are so stringent that a person has to be in the unit and can only rent one room. And it can only be, I think, like a few nights or something. Don't quote me on
the days,
the exact things, but it became impossible to rent your full unit to people. But a lot of people want that, right? They want the whole experience where they can come and have their privacy. And it decreased the property rentals. Airbnb rentals went down by something like 60%. But guess what? New York across the Hudson went up by 50-something%. Don't quote me exact numbers, but it's in that realm. So it's a huge difference.
Interesting enough, also, I believe it's still to this day, Collingwood does not have Ubers and does not have any Airbnb.
For what? That's why.
And the only reason I know that because my parents used to own a property there, and good luck. Unless you own there, and if you're visiting, the only place you could stay, there are a few motels there in town, and there's not that many, or you have to go as far as Wasaga or Barrie, or you stay at West End, right in Blue Mountain.
Yeah, so there you go. Hotels are collecting all the cash. And I mean, while there's still Airbnbs in Toronto that are allowed to operate, and these rules are stringent, but you can still operate. There is definitely legal ways of doing it properly without any manipulations. Those people who are able to stay in the industry and do short-term rentals, they are making a lot more money. And based on conversation that I've had with partners and competitors, they're seeing way higher prices per night that they're getting for those rooms because a lot of people left the market. And, hotel prices definitely went up, but Airbnb prices went up as well. So there is definitely a lot of, benefit of getting into the space if the rules can be followed that are being made a little bit harder to follow, but nonetheless. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, as you increase the barrier of entry, it's always like those who are there will make more money. But the other issue we have in Toronto is the fact that they got a lot of people coming in, students and work visas. One thing we're seeing right now across the board with most rentals is people that have come to Canada in the last 3, 4, 5 months are staying in Airbnbs. But majority of the Airbnbs are outside of Toronto. So if someone's working in Toronto, and this is what we're facing, they're all coming to rent after 2 or 3 months. But most landlords will not approve them because, first of all, not much of a credit history, not much of a work history. So they can rent. So all these people are actually in Airbnbs right now. But they have to commute to the city. So one of the issues that we're facing, if they're putting this much restriction on short-term rentals, is these people that are coming here, they can't find any place to rent. And that's becoming an issue right now because they're all getting, I had a person that was renting in Aurora and short-term rental and wanted to get back to Yonge and Sheppard. But I know our landlord did not go for them because they just came, there was no credit history, and they actually had an issue a few years ago with the tenant that stayed there and didn't pay rent, so they're not going to approve them.
Right. I think you can speak a lot to that experience where the rules in Ontario are just brutal when it comes to long-term. The governments are saying, we don't have enough supply. And they're, again, witch hunt against short-term rentals. That's only 1.6%, give or take. Again, might be a stat that's not 100% accurate, but it's not like 20, right? And they're going after that 1.6%, trying to decrease it, while their other rules and regulations are not incentivizing people to do long-term because people are afraid. In my situation, my family, they said, we're not doing another long-term rental ever again because you're hostage to those tenants. And last time, it was like $10,000 worth of damage after 1 year, and property was brand new.
I actually had an agent recently just send me a picture of her own place that she rented out a year and a half ago, I think. And literally, I thought there was a storm in the backyard because the backyard was demolished. The fence was down. The deck was destroyed. And she walks in, she calls me, and she's like, "Oh, can they even smoke in the house?" I'm like, "Well, I'm guessing you're an agent. You should know, but what's going on?" It's like, entire place reeks of smoke, and I can't even kick the person out. So she's had her mortgage increase drastically. Rent is not covering that. She's negative all the time. She can't even sell the place because tenant is not moving on, and the place is not in a showable state to get the maximum value out of it. So she's probably even going to be negative when she sells the place. So which is unfortunate, because as a landlord, you shouldn't be penalized to buy something and rent it out and make money. Mortgages go up, property taxes go up, but you can't increase your rent. Maximum you can increase your rent is 2.5% when the property taxes, they just increase it by 5%. Of course, you can put that application and say, "Hey, listen, there's a different circumstance. We're not going to go by the guideline. We're going to increase it more than that." But good luck getting that application through right now.
But yeah, it's brutal. You probably have some.
I have interesting stories. Let's not get into the horror of it. Yeah, but the more we focus on investment properties, it always goes down to pre-screening the tenants. But sometimes you look at it, employment is great.
Yeah, we have that
credit report is amazing. You meet the person, and they very well spoken. Presentation is all there, and then a year later,
there is a drug in your unit. It turns out to be, it's pretty insane. And like I said, it's wild that governments are making these regulations for long-term rent even more stringent. And when I speak to agents, the ones who have not had really bad experiences, they're like, no, it's all about vetting and it's fine. And I'm like, well, we've done that. And, still, you never know what you're going to get. And the ones, landlords who had this experience, they are very risk averse around renting it to long-term tenants, and people just having their houses sit. I have a client in Burlington that is not interested in renting that house at all unless it's short-term, because they will just let it sit there. We don't want anything to happen to it. It's pretty crazy.
I'll give you two good examples. We recently dealt with a gentleman, had his condo up for rent. Again, he had an incident few years ago, actually 2 incidents with tenants. So, and this is after he got to know me, so we started renting the properties out. So we got lucky with the first one. Second one we're renting out, it's been sitting empty and we've had probably over 20 offers, probably another 20 people sent in their supporting documents with no offers. And I'm like, listen, don't even send an offer. Let me just see if the landlord will accept it. And he's like, listen, I'd rather have it sit empty than to get someone that I'm even 10% unsure of, because once they go in, as it is, it's empty. At least I know I have my place. But they go in, if they wreck the place, not only I'm not getting paid, I got to go on fixed damages. I'm not doing it. And that's the source of income for them.
For sure. And it's wild that people are willing to be losing money instead of getting into the situation, to me. And that's why we kind of try and target those types of people and say, hey, listen, you can figure out what you can do in the future. But in the meantime, let's make you some money by throwing it on Airbnb or other sites to kind of cover your expenses.
Yeah, it would have been amazing if we actually, tenancy laws would apply to the same way the commercial laws apply. You didn't pay, lock you out, and good luck, right? Alberta is somewhat close. I was just proving the point. 24 hours, you can evict a tenant, and then 14 days and 28 days. It's a very different. It's all Canada. It's just a different province, right?
I think there needs to be a mentality shift, because everyone looks at landlords thinking, okay, these guys are sitting on a property. They got a lot of cash. Oh, they can afford not to increase their rent, or they can afford, not get their rent for a few months. How is that even a possibility when the mortgage rates have gone up so much? Everything has increased. Your maintenance fee has gone up probably in the last 2 years about 20%. So what, you're still...
Because your tenant just broke something in the lobby.
Yeah.
And they decided to do a special assessment, right?
It is wild. And you're completely right. I was just speaking to a good family friend. He is a seasoned real estate agent, and he is a builder. He builds custom homes. And I was speaking to him about potential partnerships. And I said, hey, why don't I just come over and we grab a coffee or something? And he said, listen, this is not the best time. I am having very difficult financial situation right now. So like I'm not in the mind space to have a meeting, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm thinking like this guy has multiple homes, like he's a multimillionaire and very successful individual, and he's having financial crunch. Like the builders are not paying for the pre-construction condos that he sold. He's like they're delaying payments for months at a time. You can probably speak to that as well. And it's just very difficult, not just for people who are, living paycheck to paycheck. It's people who are wealthy are feeling that serious financial strain. And like I said, the governments are not making it any easier for them to do long-term. They're saying, hey, we want to have more inventory on the market. You just mentioned right before we sat down right now that New York has passed a law where after 28 days, you can squat. Like they're complaining the same way government's complaining here in Ontario, not enough long-term supply, yet they're making it extremely unenticing for people to rent long-term.
But on a positive note, if I may interrupt, I've had actually an amazing experience, and that's something that you and I have discussed in the past, where my tenants, my investors who would rent out a property, they would, I would find a company, I know of a few, and hopefully you'll be also in that space very shortly after, where I would rent it to a short-term luxury rental association. So my clients will rent it out a unit for 3 years. We know after 1 year it's kind of illegal, but still the contract would be for 3 years. We'll lock in the price, call it, I don't know, $3,001 a year, $3,200 then another year, $3,500 the other year. I've had nothing but the most amazing, unbelievable experience. We've got those properties back, not even the same, even better, because they would rent it out to a short-term luxury, right? And of course, they have to clean them, they have to maintain them, they have to present them the way the pictures show, so they can't really go in and, destroy the whole place. And you get it as like, you walk in and like, oh my God, hundreds, thousands of, So, but that's what I'm trying to say. So on a positive note.
There you go. Myths debunked that, you rent short term and everything gets destroyed. No, you actually have the problem. That's what I'm trying to relate to people. And they're like, no, I don't know, like wear and tear. I'm like, actually, the opposite, because you get professional cleaning all the time. So thank you for that.
Not only professional cleaning, but also maintenance. Because if you were as an executive coming into the country, right, and renting for that type of company for 3 months, even though it's his property and I'm a short-term rental company, you would expect a certain level, right? So,
Wow.
I apologize.
No, that's exactly what it is, because that was the last time we were talking also on like, what, if you're doing short-term rental, maybe there is more wear and tear. Then we had the discussion, and I'm going back. I mean, looking at my clients that have properties, they're kept in a way better condition than the comparable one that was rented on. Anything that we rented, like we bought brand new homes, clients that bought, and they rented it out. After a year and a half, all these properties needed to be painted, literally. Again, given like, they were builder paints, it's going to scuff them easily, but like same property that was short term, there was way less wear and tear. And reason being, okay, listen, someone comes there, they're not living there 24/7. They come, they go out, like they come back at night, they sleep. So there's not much traffic through it. Of course, you get a bad luck, if you rent to the wrong person, they throw a party, that could happen. But there are ways to eliminate that and reduce the risk of that happening. So if you take that portion of it out, this is the best way for investment. But unfortunately in Toronto, we're restricted.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I said, there's still ways to do it, and there's ways to capitalize on the limited supply of those short-term rentals and make more money. So let's kind of switch gears into another big topic that's happening right now. It's the financial crunch for not just the home buyers, of course, that we've discussed it a little bit, can dive deeper into it, but also for developers who are struggling. So this is more your expertise now. I've read some articles where you see that people are walking away, home buyers are walking away from $140,000 deposits that they put down without closing on the property and potentially being sued by the builder. And if you think about it, like I just did the math in my head, even if you're making 100 Gs, which is a very good salary in Canada, way above average, after tax, you're making like 60, 70 grand, let's say, right? That's 2 years salary.
How long will it take you to make that money back?
Yeah, you're just literally giving away 2 years of your hard work because you've been put in the situation that's happening in the space right now. And the other thing is that you have builders also defaulting and going to receivership. So just want to open it for discussion to see what you guys know about this and in the space.
So, I mean, talking about people walking away from deposit, I've seen as high as like 400,000 walk away. Yeah, because the reason is they bought it at the peak of the market, and usually when you buy pre-construction, you pay a premium. So they paid even a little bit more than what the market value was at that point. Yeah, and what happened was the price never got to that point, and then we had the interest rate hike, prices went down. So the gap between the market value and what the guy paid for it, I've seen detached properties, around Oakville, like 600,000 gap. There's no way someone can come up with $600,000 at, let's say, $2 million price point and still pay a down payment and go in and buy it. Well, there are some people that already did it, they closed it, but that's why we saw, people walking away from a lot of these homes. Some properties caught on fire, God knows how. And
I have an idea.
that's a problem because, again, market is hot. People get excited. They buy into these things. But the biggest problem is right now, investors who bought previously to rent are not even wanting to do that anymore. First quarter of 2024, 47% of downtown condos were either vacant or tenanted. That means they're all investors. If someone was living there, that means that's a principal res. If it's vacant or it's tenanted, that's all investors. So if investors are unloading their property, that means it's not cash flowing. It doesn't make sense to hold it. Why would they go and buy pre-construction? We've had the lowest amount of pre-cons getting sold in the last 12 months. Reason being, investors are looking at it. They're like, listen, why would I buy something right now that I'm paying a premium? It's not going to cover itself. And I have to deal with a tenant that's problematic. Right now, this is an issue. Maybe in 3-4 years, with the amount of immigration that's coming up, the rents will increase and, rental prices will cover your mortgage payments and your maintenance fees and everything else. But the biggest issue is the laws. Even if you rent it out, you still run the risk that if someone doesn't pay you, good luck collecting. It's going to take you so long. Right. And who wants to go through it? I actually had someone that told me, they called me, not my clients, and they said, this is the problem they're having. They just kicked the tenant out and the house is destroyed. If they want to sell, how much it is. And I'm like, okay, did you file with the landlord and tenant board? No, we didn't. I'm like, why not? Oh, it's going to take so long. The guy was out $28,000 in rent and he doesn't go through landlord and tenant board. I'm like, well, of course the tenant is going to see that. He's going to go do that to someone else because no one's going to go through the hell of a process that it is.
Yeah, it's rough to say the least. And like you said, the increased mortgage rates made it so much more expensive for people to pay on a monthly basis.
Yep.
And if the tenant's not paying anything, you're covering already an increased cost, a carrying cost, which is wild. And then, as you mentioned, if the property is valued at a lower price, then you can't even get a mortgage for the full thing. You have to come up with cash. And some people just, they don't have rich parents or siblings who can lend them that money. They either have to go to private lenders, which is the most insane rates you will see, and they can run themselves bankrupt. So the people are walking away on massive deposits, which is insane.
So I just want to piggyback on a few things that you've said. Back in 2020, when COVID started, a lot of applications by the builders were in the city for future development. They were paused, and they have about 4 years to actually hit the market and start selling. Because after that, the builder has to sell. Well, it really depends on their financial institution, where it's 50% they have to sell before they break the ground, 60%, 70%.
Yeah.
Really depends on the builder, whether it's Green Park, Tridel,
100%.
You name it. So we are seeing this year, I believe they've launched the 2024.
Condo launches?
Yeah, condo launches in the last 4-6 to 6 months, and I have not seen a percentage paid to in terms of commissions as high as 6 to 10%, and almost 20 years of my business. Have you?
Yeah, no.
Okay, so the biggest issue right now with the builders, they had to launch it. They had to start selling the projects because otherwise they have to swallow the cost of all of that pre-planning and you name it. Second thing. For example, free development, he just launched the condo, right?
Yeah.
383 square feet selling for $800,000, more or less.
Yeah.
If we go into see the same unit in resale, even if it's, for example, 155 Yorkville is probably the most comparable in size. You can buy it for 500,000, 550.
Yeah.
So why would one buy a pre-construction condo at 800,000, pay the development charges, the education levies, yada yada yada? So it's another 100,000. If you're not moving in, if it's not your principal residence, you have to pay HST on top. So your closing costs could be anywhere from 80,000 to 150,000, right? So at the end of the day, people look at right now pre-con and resale, and they're like, why would I go for pre-con if I can buy right now resale much cheaper? Maybe not covering the mortgage rate, the rental rate, or whatever the revenue, but at the end of the day, it's not 800,000 plus another $100,000 of closing costs, and then who knows what's going to be in 4 or 5 years in terms of interest rate. My guesstimate will be probably somewhere in between 4 to 5%, but who knows, right?
It is wild. And so, going back to these builders defaulting and going into receivership.
Because they can't sell the project right now fast enough.
Exactly. And
No, well, they've even sold it. Most of these receiverships are projects that are sold, but because of the rising interest rate, it just financially they couldn't repay back the loan, so they just
construction costs too.
Yeah.
They skyrocketed. They sold it before construction costs went up by 50%, and the interest rates.
Yeah, we had like 2 projects, like one of them Buckingham in Mimico, and it was a partnership with GO Train, Transmetrolinks, and that was like a crazy project launched at the beginning of COVID. They sold out 3 towers, I think, within a month. We had, a lot of interest in there, and it's crazy to see that the builder, first of all, builders stopped paying commissions, so they didn't pay any of the commissions when it was due. A year and a half later, they said, okay, they're going into receivership, and God knows what's going to happen. We had that happen with 33 Yorkville a few years ago. It was during COVID. So, builder dug the ground when, I think they were up to P3 or P4, and work stopped, and then they sold that to another builder. And to my understanding, whoever had bought there got an offer to either pay more for the same unit, or they can walk. Yeah. But again, because of the construction, because of the cost of construction.
Right, that was going to be my question. What happens when the builder goes into the receivership? The property investor, a home buyer, they just get their deposit back.
Yeah.
Right, but that's 2-3 years after they put that money.
Well, that's actually, if you have a condo, you get it back. It's funny because a lot of these detached home builders, if they go bankrupt, you may not even see your deposit. And that happened, yeah. Because 2 different laws, but Tarion covers only up to 100,000. So, if you're buying a detached house and you put down, 300,000, well, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Wow. Luckily, we at least have Tarion, but again,
That's 100,000.
A certain amount, but these are unprecedented times that that's just unbelievable. And I guess tying it back to the short-term rental stuff, we talked about the stringent regulations and that the supply is coming down, but actually overall throughout the years that is the case. But recently we've been seeing the trend when you use the different system to measure it. We're seeing more short-term rental properties going on the market, and in my opinion, it's because people are having that financial crunch and they're going to be able to maximize their revenue from their property. They can make double is a little tough, but
20 to 30% easily.
That's no brainer. Most of the time, around 50%, because you've got to have other expenses as well. If you're managing yourself, you can go up and managing and cleaning yourself. You will double your profit.
Yeah.
But sometimes people don't want to be doing the cleaning. They have their full-time jobs at a lot of the times, and they don't want to focus on this, so they hire somebody like us, and then we have to pay for cleaning. So those additional costs, they don't go to the property owner. But even in these cases, they make 50% more, or again 30 to 50% more, depending on the situation. And it is insane that even during the more stringent regulations, people are trying to find ways because they're struggling. They could be losing their homes, right? And especially if they are able to close a property that they have to stretch themselves for, so they don't lose that $140,000, like you said, north of $200,000 deposits, because you have to work for it for 2+ years if you have a good salary. They try and maximize their ability to bring revenue from that property, and they understand it's short term, and especially if they had negative experience with the long-term tenants. So yeah, it's pretty wild.
Once again, on a positive note, I came to Canada in 1997. Not sure about you, but 1997, you were able to buy some. For example, my parents purchased back in Milton for $170,000 a detached home, right? We are in a difficult time right now, if one would say so, right? Based on the interest rates, supply, demand, and so on and so forth, right? And the government interactions with the real estate market and you name it. But at the end of the day, what can we buy today for $160,000, $170,000 a parking spot in downtown Toronto, right?
Young and St. Clair.
So at the end of the day, if you look back in the real estate, of course, we've had our dips, but it's been always going up, right? Back in the days, I purchased 20 years ago. I was just thinking yesterday in Mississauga, 600 square feet for $200,000 a condo. In today's world, that's 600 square feet is probably about $600,000 in the same Mississauga spot, right? Yeah. So I tell my clients when we purchase pre-construction, please, when you purchase something, when you look at something, make sure you're able to close. It's not about quantity that you're buying, it's about the quality that you're buying. Time, COVID can happen, war can happen, God knows what else can happen, right? At the end of the day, please be prepared to close on the property. Yeah. And I think you probably would speak to that as well, because at the time of closing, I might not be able to sign it for you, or you might be in a crunch situation where you need to walk away from the deposit, or you're thinking of walking away from the deposit, but that's not that easy. It's not just, okay, you give up $100,000, $300,000, $400,000. The builder can go after you. The builder can sue you. The builder might sell it for less money and then not only sue you for $100,000, but also can sue you for damages. And the difference, if you purchased it at $2 million, now he sold it at 1.5, there's another $500,000 that he can sue. So what I can tell now, what I'm been saying to my clients, please be prepared to close at whatever time it is. Please try to do your best to find the funds, and we'll push through it. It takes about 3 to 5 years for a bounce back, correct? So
yeah, and I mean, it's that's a very good point. Try and close, and then hire us to do short-term rentals so they can maximize the profits, so they can at least cover that
the carrying
cost. Because a lot of the times I hear from my mentors and people in the industry in the short-term space who are operating similar companies to Ad Astra Host, that people are not even looking to be making a lot of money from this. They're just looking, especially when they're buying in cottage country, that's very seasonal. They're just trying to cover costs, and then they're expecting to make money on this property in let's say 5 years when the area gets a little bit more developed. So that's one way to look at things. Of course, we would love to make profit for everybody, so that's the whole point. But people even have that mentality, because I find that the people have lost trust in the system. Again, going back to not wanting to rent long term because of all these failing procedures with landlord-tenant board, right? Like, it's just horrid. So they're looking towards other opportunities, not only for more money, but just for their own peace of mind. So that's a big thing. That's where we're trying to help people. Kind of another angle for you guys. We talked about very expensive real estate even during these times. It's still super expensive, as you mentioned. You could buy it for $200,000 now, $600,000. People are getting severely priced out of the housing market. Whether it's a condo, forget about the house. That's unattainable for most of the people. So a lot of people now are coming together and either buying it with their friends or family members, right? To just own something. So they don't.
Well, the best way to finance it is Mapa Bank. If you've ever heard of it.
Definitely a useful one, but sometimes people don't have that, so they have to resort to saying, hey. Siblings might come together on a property, right? Or even friends, right? They invest, they kind of, well, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that and your experiences in this space. And
well, I've definitely had some people do that. I remember we sold a townhouse complex pre-construction, and one brother bought it, and then next day, I got a call from the younger brother. and apparently there was like 3 or 4 friends that were buying together. That was that's something people got to watch out to, because if you're buying with a bunch of people, like if someone time of closing comes and they got an issue, and funny enough, when we ended up buying, it was only one person's name on it, because I explained to them time of closing came. Apparently no, behind the scene there was like 4 people. 2 of them didn't want to close, they wanted to just sign, and it becomes an issue because there's nothing in writing, everything is verbal. 2 people say, listen, we're not closing, you still have another 5% to pay, you still got to get a mortgage. Everyone was supposed to go on a mortgage, they didn't. So that becomes an issue unless exactly everyone's on the same page. And there's more complications, because once you buy, a year from now, 2 years from now, something happens to one of the partners, what's going to happen with the property? So if people are pulling money together to buy, just you got to really plan it out well, know who's buying it, how long you're keeping it, and what's going to happen in the middle if someone wants to sell their share.
Right, because that's a non-traditional home ownership model that we haven't seen before, because you don't really have to go down this route. Like when you are making a decent salary, but buying a $200,000-$300,000 house, because that's how much they used to cost.
Yeah.
In good neighborhoods, decent neighborhoods, you could afford it yourself. Now you gotta split it.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are legal ways of kind of building it together. Right?
Yeah, there are contracts in place. Yeah,
It just gets very.
but it gets complicated as you got more people, and there's more situations to deal with.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised that then people would wanna, if they close on this, and even if they live there, that's when they could, they're strapped for cash. That's when they start renting.
Yeah.
They need to live somewhere, but they might start renting a room or 2 in their dwelling, and then the city is even pushing down, saying, "Hey, you can only do one."
One becomes a
It's
problem.
brutal, right? Like, what are they doing? That's the question. Anyway, so any
From time to time, I don't know where these people find me, but I get a phone call. So it's like, oh, Elena, like, nice to meet you. You're an expert in whatever in the real estate and condo market. Can you please let me know if I can buy something for $200,000? I'm like, yes, back in 1987.
that's wild. Well, thank you so much for coming, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and for everybody else who's listening, if you guys wanna get into the short-term rental space, feel free to reach out, and we'll help you the best way we can.
Guys, thank you for watching. This was a really great episode with the new changes in Airbnb. If anyone needs to get in touch with questions or just help with their Airbnb, they got to hit up Ad Astra. Anton is the person to talk to. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.